Hey there everyone, this is Samuel Johnson and welcome back to the MCU Perspectives, What If Edition. And today we're going to be discussing episode 18 of Marvel's What If / the final episode of season 2, What If Strange Supreme intervened? So, we're at the season 2 finale now, which means we're going to be also putting this vlog on hiatus since, season 3's not out yet, so we gotta wait for that to come out before we, continue looking at episodes. But, well, what were my expectations going into this episode? As I said at the beginning of the season 2 side of these vlogs, the season 1 finale of What If was okay. And that was really all it was. It was just okay. The finale to What If really did not feel... The finale to Season 1, while grand in scale with some genuinely cool action, and it was still nice to see all these different variants of characters duking it out with alongside each other to defeat Infinite Ultron, where it all fell apart was, well... I felt the action kind of overshadowed the plot. There was not a lot of good character interaction between the individual members of the team. We felt a little rushed in certain areas, and ultimately Strange Supreme kind of it felt like he was the one carrying the entirety of the Guardians of the Multiverse on his back. So it didn't really click. So it didn't really feel as grand as it should have, and it kind of and ultimately some parts of it just did not work as well as it should have. And rather than being a culmination of everything that came before it, it was just a somewhat decent finale to season 1. So obviously season 2 kind of had some big shoes to fill. After all, season 2, in my opinion, is significantly better than season 1. It's still not perfect, but the stories are at least a lot better structured in season 2 versus that of season 1, with some honestly interesting ideas and setups and stories that do take advantage of the premises they've been given to tell unique and interesting tales set within those universes. So ultimately, season 2, I feel, was better, but at the same time, I had heard about the finale of season 2. I had heard about certain things in it. I even heard certain opinions of it. And ultimately, it was one that I was going into a little wary of, but still a little excited. Well, on top, especially since they have been hinting that that something has been building up throughout the series. After all, back with the Kaori episode, we saw Doctor Strange Supreme come in and seem to want her for something. Likewise, the stuff with Captain Carter, as she got flung to the 1602 universe before she was eventually brought forth before Strange Supreme went to go talk to her at the end of the last episode. So likewise, there was a bit more build up to it this time around, and of course questions were raised about what was going to happen. What was going to be the culmination of season 2? Well, it's actually a really interesting one. So, does it actually compare? Is this a much better finale of season 1? Is this one I was happily excited for? Does this one meet the expectations that the finale of season 1 should have reached? Well, let's take a look at it and find out. And one more thing before I get to the plot summary. So you know how every episode of What If typically begins with a Marvel Studios logo, which of course leans in comic book panels, comic book scripts, and all that before bringing up Marvel Studios with shots of the various films in the MCU. For the finale of season 1, they did shots from What If, which I love that. That's kind of cool. I dig it. But either way, the plot. So today's episode actually picks up right from where the last one left off, with Strange Supreme finding Captain Carter trapped in 1602, and just kind of giving her an ear to talk, kind of giving her a shoulder to lean on and an ear to listen, as they're just kind of sitting down, getting some scotch, which Strange Supreme magically brings up, and, well, they're just happy to have the company. So as they're both just sitting there, Captain Carter does eventually ask the Strange Supreme to bring her back to her universe, since, she's kind of stuck here right now and needs to go back, and Strange Supreme says, yeah, he will, but there's something he wants to do first. As such, he immediately warps himself and Captain Carter away as they arrive at the place that Strange Supreme calls his home. What he calls the Sanctum Infinitum. And it's literally what it says. It's essentially the Sanctum Sanctorum, but infinite. Like, fucking infinite. And the thing is, Strange Supreme has not been idle here. So you remember how at the end of Season 1, Strange Supreme offered to contain Killmonger and I forgot his name, Zola Well, it turns out that Strange Supreme decided that he was going to do something else this time as well. Because the thing is, there are other world killers in the multiverse besides him. There are plenty of dangerous beings in particularly unique universes that, because of the paths they go down, would eventually result in them becoming world killers in and of themselves. And so, as a form of penance to himself, sorry, digesting food, Strange Supreme has essentially put it on himself to go to these universes and then capture these would-be world killers before they can, destroy their worlds, which Captain Carter is impressed by. And of course, Strange Supreme is all kind of happy for, and is kind of happy that she's impressed. But of course, the question is raised: why is he showing this to Captain Carter? Well, one got out. Apparently, one particular world killer escaped, which even Captain Carter was able to guess, since when you have so much of one thing contained in one area, something's eventually going to break out. And Strange Supreme says yes, yeah, he could, yeah, that's pretty much what it is, and he needs Captain Carter's help to get this person. A woman who escaped into a random universe. Specifically, a reality where, well, you remember how Hydra sent a spy into the Project Rebirth lab that set up a bomb that destroyed most of the other super soldier research, and that both in the main MCU timeline and in Captain Carter's timeline, that guy kind of got screwed over as someone got the super soldier serum? Well, the universe that this would-be world killer ran off into, well, it was successful. The bomb killed everyone at the lab, and as a result, this world had no Captain anyone. No Captain America, no Captain Carter, no anyone, and as a result, the Red Skull was able to go forward with his plan of unleashing the power of the Tesseract across the world, and, well, he took it over and then killed it. So, yeah, world's kind of fucked, but that's just a little bit of trivia. Either way, the world killer is here. Though, before Peggy goes through, she asks the obvious question: why doesn't Strange Supreme get this world killer? He captured her before. Why not get her again? But Strange counters that Captain Carter is an unknown variable, so she'd be able to more easily capture this person. And as such, Captain Carter just kind of smirks at that before she steps forward into this other universe. Though when she arrives, she's greeted by the Watcher, who gives her the lowdown on the universe. And basically, she wants to know why he's there. Is he just there to narrate or to help? And as the Watcher narrates, she gets her answer, but the Watcher's also there to essentially give Peggy warning. Because he thinks that what Strange Supreme is doing is not exactly a good idea, which even Captain Carter just rolls her eyes at, because she at least thinks that Steven is doing something, whereas the Watcher just sits and watches. And so the Watcher just pretty much tells her there's a difference between watching and seeing, and he thinks that something's going to happen. And while he's not going to try and stop Peggy from whatever it is she's doing, he does at least tell her to be careful, because he's afraid that what he'll be seeing of her in the future may not be kind, before he fades away. And sure enough, no sooner does he fade away, that Peggy realizes that she's not alone in the area, as we see something darting between all these dead trees, and as Peggy tries fighting it, this thing keeps ramming into her, and it's probably worth noting that this thing is moving super fast, and its streak is blue. Yeah, you can probably guess who it is, but let's pretend you don't. And either way, Peggy actually does end up duking it out with this person, and manages to somewhat knock this person off her feet as she throws her shield at her. But ultimately, as Peggy is in this thing, and this person are going head on, Peggy throws a shield at her, where she grabs it, and we learn that the world killer is in fact Kaori, who can speak English now. I guess she had absorbed that somehow. I mean, she learned Spanish somewhat, so whatever. But either way, basically, at first Peggy's being accusatory, calling Kaori a world killer, but Kaori kind of reveals something. She's not a world killer. Rather, she was kidnapped, and she's able to correctly guess that Captain Carter was fed the whole you're dealing with a crisis that could affect the entire multiverse thing. As such, once she kind of guesses right, she kind of sort of powers down a little and returns Captain Carter's shield, as she tells her that Strange Supreme is playing her like a fiddle. Why? Well, Strange Supreme kind of gives the answer as Carter and Kaori get close to one another, before a mystical portal opens up and both women are sucked through back to the Sanctum Infinitum. And at first, Strange Supreme is all like, oh, thanks a lot, Peggy, you got my prisoner back. Well, let's go put her back then, as he tries zapping her, but Kaori's able to put up a shield, and she finally reveals to Peggy what's really going on. Turns out Strange Supreme's lost it again. It's basically, he's captured all these, he's not only been capturing world killers, but also heroes. Basically, across infinite worlds, he's been gathering all these heroes and villains and then just bringing them all here to the Sanctum. And he's not doing it because all of them could potentially end their worlds. No, far from it. He's doing it because he wants to bring back a world. Specifically, but deep in the bowels of the Sanctum Infinitum is a forge that if you feed it the right material, it can recreate a universe. Specifically, Strange Supreme's universe. And yeah, that's why Strange Supreme has been gathering these people. They're basically just fodder to be fed to the forge so that his home reality can be reborn. And alongside it, it's Christine, which, yeah, once that news comes out, Captain Carter thinks that her friend is a little cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. And while at first Strange Supreme denies it, once it's finally out in the open and Captain Carter realizes it's the truth, he confirms it and states that wouldn't you want the same thing? Wouldn't you do all that for Steve? And you can see that Peggy is faltering as Strange Supreme is laying down the power on Kaori. But ultimately, Captain Carter's sense of justice wins out as she uses her shield and gets in the way of Strange Supreme's energy blast, which does actually stop it. And she does say, "Yeah, I would do anything for Steve, but I wouldn't do this because I know he wouldn't want this." As such, Strange Supreme is a little disappointed, but he still wants Kaori, so he shoots another energy ray, only this one actually goes around Captain Carter and just hits Kaori from two sides. Which again, she's able to hold off thanks to her powers, but it's still too much. As such, Peggy tries running up to Strange and punching him, but he's got a magical force field up. She can't lay a finger on him. As such, Peggy decides to go with another tactic. After all, the Sanctum Infinitum is essentially a prison for some of the multiverse's most dangerous monsters. So she lets them out. She throws her shield right at a wall and shatters a good number of their prisons, releasing all of them into the Sanctum, which distracts Strange, and ultimately gives Carter and Kaori enough time to get away. As the two of them realize they need to stop Strange Supreme, because even if they're releasing all of these people, this is a temporary solution at best. They're still on Strange Supreme's turf here, and if they don't destroy the forge before he's able to feed people to it, then all of this is for nothing. As such, from there, we get an honestly awesome chase scene as we see Captain Carter and Kaori going further and further down into the depths of the Sanctum Infinitum, and just one by one, and basically we get a montage of all these different versions of characters duking it out on the upper floors. All of them just honestly really cool and unique variants of characters that we know. We see a different version of Wenwu with white hair and blue rings. We see Rocket with more technologically advanced. We see two different versions of Thor duking it out with one another. As Kaori and Captain Carter go further down, they end up coming across, well, apparently the zombie Scarlet Witch from the What If Zombies episode, who is just as hungry for flesh here as she is in the original episode, which leads to a genuinely awesome scene where we see Captain Carter duking it out with all the zombies she summons, while Kaori and the Scarlet Witch are just flying up in the air, just shooting energy rays at each other. It's genuinely badass, but even that. And while Scarlet Witch is taken care of, the zombies are still a thing, but that ultimately comes to a head when guess who shows up but Hela. And this is a evil version of Hela. This is one that's more in line with her main universe counterpart. As such, this one hasn't learned mercy. Her outfit's not white. She's just basically the Hela we all know, but it's still Hela. She's still fucking awesome. She's able to take control of the zombies and immediately attacks Captain Carter and Kaori, but immediately that fight scene gets thrown aside as Surtur arrives on the scene, and, well, Surtur and Hela recognize one another, and immediately they both direct their attention to one another, which allows Captain Carter and Kaori to get away, but as they run, they end up running into an alternate version of Thanos, who gets wiped away, and the one who did it was Killmonger from the end of Season 1, who's still wearing the Infinity Armor, but ultimately Captain Carter realizes, hey, if they can can get that Infinity Armor, maybe that'll give them the boost that they need to destroy the World Forge. And sure enough, Kaori's able to trick Killmonger by using her powers to just, like, shift him out of the armor. And before sending him right into the midst of the battle, as well as, again, we see these two versions of Thor just clash, just whamming into each other with their versions of Mjolnir. It's just fucking awesome, okay? Look, it may seem like I'm skimming through this, and I probably am, but this, like with Season 1, this episode is mostly fight scenes, but these fight scenes, I think, work better because this is a who's who of multiversal variants. All these different and unique versions of characters just let loose in this alien environment. All of them exceedingly powerful. All of them willing to throw their weight around. All of them taken out of their times and places. And all of them want to get the hell out of here and take out anyone that's in their path. And a good chunk of them are people who would very much be ready to wipe the floor with the heroes. There's even like a more godlike, monstrous version of the Hulk there, who's armed with weapons and all these other is actually fucking glowing. It's actually just, if you can't tell by my fanboying, I kind of like this. It's so damn awesome. It makes no sense. I will openly, and I also admit, this part does feel a little rushed, especially since Kaori does seem to solve a good chunk of the problems by using her powers to either just open portals and throw things through, or shoot energy blasts that can withstand anything, or just phase things through, but I'm willing to just I'm just willing to let all that slide, because I'm just sitting back and enjoying the awesome. And kind of going back to the plot, after Kaori sends Killmonger to go fight with the people upstairs, basically Captain Carter is able to integrate the Infinity Armor into herself, and thus gains all 6 of the Infinity Stones. As such, she and Kaori do manage to make their way to the Forge, but that's when Strange Supreme arrives. So again, sorry, digesting food. And once more tells Captain Carter and Kaori that they're not going to succeed. He is going to get his world back. He's going to get Christine back, and there is nothing these two women can do to stop this, which again leads to another fight scene, which I am still going to go on record and say I think is fucking awesome. I will say this. Captain Carter, despite being armed with all 6 Infinity Stones, doesn't use them in the same way that anyone else would have. Because, again, they're the 6 Infinity Stones. Though, to be fair to her, the Infinity Stones tend to have a negative feedback on people who use them. After all, when Thanos used them to wipe out half the universe, it nearly took off his arm. And then when he used the stones again to destroy them, it nearly killed him. And hell, with Tony Stark, he was able to use the stones to wipe out Thanos as an army, and it killed him. And going back to the Hulk, when he used the Infinity Stones to bring back everyone Thanos did, it almost wrecked his arm. So what I'm saying is, yeah, I can understand why she'd be less willing to use them all, so maybe I'll let it slide. But when she does use the stones, oh my god, her and Kaori are just back-to-back OP badasses as they duke it out with Strange Supreme as he keeps trying to blast them aside, summon dragons and monsters to try and take them out. And they're able to use the power and their respective powers and abilities to just counter them, to trap the dragons up, shoot energy blast. When Strange Supreme tries creating copies of himself, Carter's able to use the Reality Stone to create copies of herself. She tries blasting at all that. She tries blasting at all of them, tries duking it out. At one point, Strange Supreme actually tries reasoning with Captain Carter, telling her, "Come on, you know this. Come on, you know this, you know me, all that, you know me, you don't really want to do this, wouldn't you want everything back?" And at one point, he used his powers to just wipe away all the clones and then bring Peggy into an illusion of the day that that Project Rebirth was being set, and thus, essentially, he's trying to do to Peggy what he tried doing to his other half back in his episode. And like with that episode, it doesn't work as Peggy sees through the illusion and manages to punch Strange Supreme. Unfortunately, though, while throughout this battle, Peggy and Kaori have been trying to weaken the Forge, well, Strange Supreme is still not going to go down without a fight. He wants his universe back, and ultimately, he's ready to do whatever it takes. As such, with the she's already got, with the forge, as such, he gets the forge up and running, and he immediately opens portals to the upper levels as he grabs individuals from the upper levels and brings them down to the forge with the intent of just dropping them in. One of which is Atarax from Kaori's episode, so sucks to be him. Jeez, I bet he wish he stayed in Skyworld. But either way, while Kaori and Captain Carter are able to try and slow the descent, again, Strange Supreme's power is too great. They can't completely counter him. And while they're able to keep using their powers to either send these people back, try and reverse time, which ultimately, again, Strange Supreme keeps countering it. Hell, when Peggy tries using her time stone to try and send everyone back Strange Supreme uses his Eye of Agamotto because it also has the time stone to try and reverse the thing. Basically, it's just looking more and more like these people are just straight up fucked. But in the face of death, these people decide, you know what? We're not gonna let him have a win. And so, seeing these two women fighting for everything they have and even getting knocked aside, many of them start throwing their weapons to them. Hela throws her crown. The Thor throws his hammer. That monstrous version of the Hulk throws his knives. We see the version of Wenwu throwing out the 10 rings and giving them to Kaori. Pretty much everyone starts throwing everything at these two ladies, and ultimately, while Kaori's able to blast Strange Supreme away and distract him, which gives Kaori enough time to grab everyone and then send them back home via the portals. Well, back with Strange Supreme. Basically, Strange Supreme is getting more and more pissed off, and the more that they keep so the two women grab all the available weapons they can and they armor up, which is another thing that apparently people call into question, because the one thing I do remember people talking about when it came to this episode was Captain Carter wearing the mishmash of all these armor and weapons from all these different heroes, which admittedly does look kind of stupid. But quite frankly, that's the least stupid thing here. And so, as a result, Captain Carter and Kaori just start wailing on Strange Supreme with all these weapons, rushing at him, knocking him aside, hitting him, just knocking him down, slamming him into walls, and with every hit, Strange Supreme starts changing. We see him getting bigger, more powerful. We see him getting more grotesque as all the monsters and demons he had absorbed over the millennia in his universe start coming out, until finally, after one too many hits, he completely transforms into a monstrous form and pretty much just tells these two ladies they're fucked. As they start trying to throw everything at him again, only now he's just brushing them off. They try blasting with a laser. He eats the laser. They try hitting with the 10 rings. He destroys the 10 rings. They throw Mjolnir at him. He eats the fucking thing. And throughout all this, Peggy is trying to reason with Steven again. Trying to say, look, come on, this isn't you. You don't have to do this. But Steven's just too lost. It's just too far gone. He's just saying, no, this is me. And eventually he even manages to knock Peggy aside one more time, as he actually manages to knock the Infinity Armor off of her, which throws the Infinity Stones to the ground. But Kaori, who also got knocked aside, sees the stones, grabs them, throws them to Peggy, who grabs them in her hand, and as Strange Supreme comes rushing at her, she manages to get in close, and with the hand holding the Infinity Stones, manages to unleash a giant punch right to Strange Supreme's face, which does so much damage that it actually kind of knocks all the demons out of him and reverts him back to his human form. Unfortunately, though, throughout all the battle, more damage was given to the forge, so it looks like it's going to go up, so they need to turn this thing off quickly. And so, as Strange Supreme is just sitting in the dust of all these monsters he absorbed, Carter goes up to him and says, look, we need to turn this thing off. How do we do it? But Strange Supreme isn't talking. He says that his grief is too much, and his grief is just too much. He can't stop this. He can't turn this off. And Peggy keeps trying to tell him, look, no, this isn't what Christine would want. Until the monstrous form until all the smoke around him reforms into the monster and says, but it's what we do, before it gets reabsorbed into Strange and he goes back to being a monster. Which again they keep duking it out, but eventually, one by one, but in the midst of the battle, they continue hitting back and forth as the thing keeps getting more unstable, and he creates a massive blast event, and ultimately, again, this part is where things get muddled in my head. It was a big fight scene, okay? I can't get all the details right, but in the midst of the battle, eventually, as the forge is starting to spread out energy, Captain Carter manages to grab Strange, and she basically does a Hail Mary as she throws herself and Strange Supreme off of the cliff of the forge right to its center. And throughout all this, while Strange Supreme is trying to fight, Carter keeps knocking him aside until she eventually throws him in. And so as he tries fighting back, you actually see something happen to the Strange Supreme, as from his monster side, his human side actually manages to come out and actually holds his monster half as he looks at the Peggy with a small smile on his face before he falls into the forge. And so, from that, there's a massive explosion of energy. Kaori cries out in Peggy's name, afraid that she's been destroyed, but ultimately, the forge just explodes. Peggy closes her eyes as she believes that she's ready to die, but when the light fades, she finds she's okay. And the one that saved her was the Watcher. Again, sorry, Chinny's swimming on the bed. And, well, turns out the Watcher brought Captain Carter to his neck of the woods, as we see essentially all the infinite parallel universes. Hold on one second. Apologies, but anyway, yeah, the Watcher saved Captain Carter and essentially brought her to his domain, and he also mentions that he saved Kaori as well, sending her back to her universe. So, yeah, he saved the day, and, well, it turns out that Strange Supreme's sacrifice did more than just stop a monster. Strange Supreme was kind of successful. He wound up bringing back his universe, but at a price. Essentially, he brought his world back, but he removed himself from the equation. Essentially, he recreated his world, but without Stephen Strange, which essentially means that this is technically an entirely new world altogether, just one where Stephen Strange just never existed at all. But essentially, by that virtue, it means that Stephen was never there to get Christine into a car accident, and thus she continues to live on in this world. Although that does make me question how this world continues to survive, since it was explicitly shown in the What If Doctor Strange Lost His Heart Instead of His Hands episode that her death was what spurred him to becoming the Sorcerer Supreme and what led him to still duking it out with Dormammu, but hey, maybe someone else did that in his stead. I don't know. Maybe it was Wong. Wong tends to do a lot in the MCU, so I wouldn't be surprised if he saved the day there too. My point is this, Strange Supreme is gone, and ultimately the Watcher does give Peggy Carter kudos, because ultimately it was because of her that Strange Supreme was able to fight back enough against the monster he became to sacrifice himself, to bring this world back. And their combined power, ultimately, by doing this, it not only stopped him from needlessly sacrificing people, but it also did exactly what he wanted. It brought his world back. And what I kind of love is that this is kind of what Strange Supreme wanted. Because if you remember back in his debut episode in season 1, when his world was crumbling around him, he begged the Watcher and told him, "Don't let the world suffer for my mistake. Punish me instead, but not the world." And now, essentially, he's gotten what he's wanted. His world is back. His Christine is back. And he's gone. He was punished for his sins. But everybody else is safe. And it's still tragic, but also hopeful, because the only reason that this happened at all was because Captain Carter reached the man he was. And the Watcher tells Peggy that that's why he didn't intervene this time around, because the right person was in the right job. Captain Carter was able to save the day, and, no, here they are now, and the fruits of her labor, which does flatter Peggy, and she's glad to hear that. Sorry, Ginny came in. But with all that out of the way, she asked the Watcher one big question: can she go home now? And the Watcher asked that, and Peggy says that yeah, she would like to go home, but she asked the Watcher if they could take the scenic route there. And so the Watcher does kind of agree to these terms as the episode ends, as we see him bringing Peggy back out into the multiverse, as we see them getting ready to go on a tour of infinity. So, yeah, that was the season 2 finale, What If Strange Supreme Intervened. And my thoughts on it? Okay, I'll say this. Objectively, I think the episode is just pretty good. It's definitely a lot better structurally compared to the season 1 finale. Well, we have more interactions between our main characters. The action, believe it or not, is really is over the top and insane, and quite frankly, I love it. And there is still suitable tension as to what's going on, and definitely keeps you invested in the story and kind of makes you want to see things turn out well. And even the ending, I think, is really nice as we see Strange Supreme make the ultimate sacrifice both to stop himself from causing any more harm and to save his universe. In that regard, it does still work out, and it does still feel like it has more weight to it as compared to the original one, to the original season 1 finale, which essentially was just taking all these random characters, throwing them together, and just seeing them fight back against the big bad. So, hold on one second. Sorry about that. Chinny was doing something. But yeah, like I said, overall, it still carries more weight to it. And even the ending with the Watcher kind of letting Peggy know that she was the right woman for the job, and that ultimately what she did a lot of good, with the promise that there is still more infinity to go through, as Peggy asked the Watcher if they can take the long way around back to her universe. I do actually like that. But the thing is, what makes me love this episode more compared to the season 1 finale? This episode is balls to the walls insane, and essentially is just every fanboy's wet dream, because, well, it's a collision of all these different random parallel universes, and the instant all of them come together in one place, everything goes insane. The action goes all over the map. Hold on one second. Sorry about that again, Chinny stuff. But like I said, yeah, the action, I think, in this episode, and the fan service, and just seeing all these characters in one place just going ape shit, and just going all over the top with their powers and all the fight scenes, I'm not going to lie, it makes me abso-fucking-lutely love this episode. Like, objectively, I cannot say this episode is a great one. I cannot. And I even will admit it has its fair share of flaws. I think that Kaori and Captain Carter can still be a bit overpowered, especially with Kaori. And as the episode goes along, they just get more and more overpowered, because and the plot feels a bit rushed in some areas, like they didn't really take as much time to set everything up. And I'll admit, while it does kind of make sense to see Strange Supreme do what he's doing here, at the same time, the last time we saw him in a leading role in an episode, he seemed to have it a lot more together, and seemed to come to terms with the whole, I fucked up and destroyed my universe thing. So, it feels a little weird to see him back in the villain role. But with that being said, I will admit that being said, you could also argue that he would have it enough together to want to still protect life, while still being obsessed with bringing his universe back, so that your mileage may vary with that complaint. But again, I am willing to put all of that aside. I'm willing to put the pacing issues aside. I'm willing to put aside the whole OP powers thing. I'm willing to put aside Strange Supreme being the villain here by virtue of one very simple fact. This episode is balls to the walls insane. And I love it. I love every second of it. I loved seeing all the prisoners get released and then duking it out of the Sanctum Infinitum. I liked seeing Captain Carter and Kaori run through the Sanctum as they try and find the Forge. I like seeing them continually releasing more prisoners who in some cases start targeting them. I liked seeing Kaori and the zombie Scarlet Witch duke it out over a horde of zombies. I liked seeing them get run out by fucking Hela, who just in her brief appearance still oozes with the same charisma that we saw her in many of her other appearances. I like seeing fucking Surtur come in. I like seeing Captain Carter get the Infinity Armor from Killmonger, where he gets sent into the fray to start duking it out with people with his Black Panther outfit, which still is cool. I like seeing Kaori and Captain Carter duke it out with Strange Supreme, as we see Captain Carter try using the individual Infinity Stone to duke it out with him, which includes using the Power Stone to fight against fucking dragons he summoned. I like seeing them multiply themselves. I like seeing Strange Supreme turn into a fucking monster. It's just, quite frankly, while I will not deny that the episode does have its fair share of problems, I am willing, rational brain, the critical part of my brain, the part of my brain that likes to analyze and measure something's worth by what it does right and what it does, and what I think it fails, gets pushed aside as my inner little boy looks at all this and goes, and that's what it is. I am willing to just ignore all of these logical fallacies. I'm willing to ignore the plot being a little rushed. I'm willing to ignore how some problems are very easy when Kaori and Captain Carter are thrown up against them. I'm willing to ignore seeing Strange Supreme having a switch flip back to evil. I am willing to ignore I'm willing to ignore all of these things because, hands down, this feels like a great season finale. And it's just by virtue of spectacle. This is definitely one of those things it's basically a style over substance. I mean, I don't mean that to say the substance is awful. It's not. It's not awful. It's flawed, but it's perfectly fine. But it's fine enough. But when it comes to style, this episode has it in spades. Like I said, seeing all of the prisoners that Strange Supreme gathered, duking it out across the Sanctum Infinitum, even crossing paths with Captain Carter and Kaori at several points, is fucking awesome. I like seeing more of these variants. I would love to know more about their stories. What led them to being world enders? I want to see what the glowing version of the Hulk story is. What led to that? I want to see more with these characters. I want to see where they are. And even if we don't, just seeing them here makes me go, okay, this looks awesome. I loved seeing the Rocket Raccoon in his robotic armor. I loved seeing Groot I loved seeing him being paired with a more feral, looking more stalwart, more angry Groot. I loved seeing them go up against I loved seeing the two Thors flying at each other. I love that we saw a dragon flying around the Sanctum Infinitum. I'll even say this. Even the finale where Kaori and Captain Carter are powered up with all of these weapons that all the heroes threw at them, I loved that too. Which again, it's stupid, it's dumb, and just doesn't really make a lot of sense. But you know what I say to that? Screw you! Enjoy the awesome! I don't care that this doesn't make sense. I don't care that you could say, oh, well, couldn't this other character do that? I don't give a shit! I love seeing them using all these weapons. And it kind of makes sense for them to do that with Strange Supreme, because after all, he's Strange Supreme. Keep in mind that one of the complaints I had with the finale of Season 1 was that he carried the Guardians of the Multiverse, doing the majority of the work. But the reason why he did that was because he was so powerful, because he was so immense. Hell, the reason why he was going around capturing would-be world enders was because he had a successful run with capturing Killmonger and Arnim Zola. And so now he's doing it with all these other people, and now we see Captain Carter and Kaori have to essentially match his level of bullshit just to take him on fair. That is how they had to keep going. And even when they do reach that level of bullshit with the Infinity Stones, all the level power-ups, Strange Supreme keeps coming back. Hell, Captain Carter had to punched him with a fistful of the Infinity Stones, and it still didn't defeat him. This, again, it's just over, like I said, it's over the top and insane, but I love it. I cannot help but love it. And I'm willing to look past the flaws that I've seen. Like, I'm willing to look past some of the things that I see there because there's just so much awesomeness, so many high-octane action scenes, so much fan service there. And yes, the ending I still think is nice. It is cool to see Strange Supreme perform one last heroic act, and that heroic act was allowing himself to die so that his universe could be reborn. I genuinely like that. It's touching, and it at least makes the sacrifice feel worth it because what brought about that change was Captain Carter reaching the man he was, the man behind all the monsters, the true Doctor Strange. That I thought was nice. I liked that. And even the ending, and it also made it worth it because it's only in a world without Stephen Strange could this version of Christine be safe. I liked that. I genuinely, honest to goodness, liked that. And the finale with the Watcher assuring Captain Carter that she was the right person for the job and that if they're gonna go and that they can still keep viewing around the universe is a nice way to continue leading into more episodes of What If for the next season. It's just, again, I cannot emphasize this enough. Again, objectively, the episode as a whole is just pretty good. It's not a great episode. Plot-wise, again, it feels rushed. The main characters, while having good chemistry, don't have as much time to spend with each other. It's still mostly action, and like I said, Captain Carter and Kari can be a bit OP as the episode goes along, and even the structure of the episode does feel very rushed in its reveals. It still feels weird. It's weird seeing Strange Supreme turn evil like he does, especially since, like I said, the last few times we saw him, he seemed to have his head on straight. But what keeps me from loving this episode is, well, while maybe overblown in action, the actions kick ass. Captain Carter and Kari do have a good chemistry together, and as the episode goes along, the action just keeps escalating. It goes all over the map. It's a great conglomerate. It's just great seeing all these different representatives of all these different worlds just clashing, going nuts, just trying to throw everything to the wind. And this is the episode. And basically, if I have to summarize this episode in one sentence, it's fuck logic, enjoy the awesome. And that's what I think this episode is. It's got high-octane action, over-the-top fight scenes, and OP characters going up against an OP supervillain. It's just, and that's all just wrapped up with a nice feel-good finale where the villain sacrifices himself to bring his world back and ensures that the world that's brought back does not have him in it. I enjoy it. Again, so pretty much, overall, I enjoyed the episode. Again, objectively, it's just pretty good, but what it does right, my inner fanboy is going, and I can't deny my inner fanboy that love. I cannot. I had fun while watching this episode, and quite frankly, I think that's really all you need. Which, honestly, that's what If is. At the end of the day, What If is just fun. That's why it's What If. The whole idea of it is just to pose these questions and then have fun with the results. See what kind of tales you can tell in these settings and see what you can do with them. And ultimately, I think Season 2 of What If succeeded in that more than Season 1 did. Like I said, I still don't hate Season 1. Season 1 I still think got the ball rolling and still had its fair share of interesting stories, but I do think Season 2 did a better job with the material it was given, and overall turned out better products. It's not like I said, it's not amazing. It's not like the best that the MCU or anything MCU adjacent has released, but at the end of the day, I think What If is still a fun show that with a fun premise that at the end of that, quite frankly, if you're curious enough, I still recommend checking out, and Season 2 more than delivers in terms of quality when it comes to that. So, yeah, that's really all I have to say. I thank you for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it, and well, I don't know when these vlogs will come back. Again, we'll see when Season 3 is announced. And I assure you, when that comes back, so too will these vlogs, which I'm just, even if they do the same thing they did with Season 2 and release them on day by day, I'm still going to be doing this on a week by week basis. So, again, you might be ahead of me when I start watching it. But at the end of the day, I do still hope you watch. If you join me for this leg of the journey, I thank you. And, well, whenever Season 3 comes out, I hope that you will join me for that as well. So, till then, I hope you have a good evening, and as always, I'm Samuel Johnson, and I'll see you next time. Take care.